gender data, which remains one of the most underfunded areas of development. This challenge is compounded by the discontinuation of flagship sources like the demographic and health surveys in many contexts. And as traditional data sources contract, we must look to non-traditional data systems, especially citizen data, to fill the increasing gap that we have. While official statistics remain essential, they too often fall short in capturing the lived realities of women and girls, particularly those most marginalized. Design limitations, resource constraints, and an emphasis on national representativeness frequently exclude key groups such as adolescent girls, single mothers, indigenous women, and women with disabilities, leaving them statistically invisible. At the same time, we are witnessing growing pushback on gender equality and on the role of civil society organizations. Yet, it is precisely these organizations, particularly feminist movements and community-based groups, that are driving citizen data efforts to reach marginalized women and girls, often missed by official statistics. They help generate more localized and actionable information and enable data collection in safer and more trusted environments. These dual pressures make it more urgent than ever to invest in data needed to inform inclusive, rights-based, and gender-responsive policies. And that brings me to today's key agenda items. One is the launch of the working group on gender and citizen data under the collaborative on citizen data. This group will bring together civil society organizations, national statistical offices, academia, and development partners to collectively strengthen the use of citizen data to address gender inequalities. We will then reflect together on how to assure quality, trust, inclusiveness, and utility in gender-focused citizen data efforts. We'll also hear about frameworks for participation and concrete examples from countries and organizations working at the intersection of gender and citizen data. Today's session is designed to be interactive. Also, whether you're joining us from civil society, academia, government, or data-focused communities, whether you are joining us online or in person in the room, your contributions are welcome and encouraged. But before we begin, I'll just mention a quick housekeeping rules. Today's session is being recorded in English, and the recording will be shared with all registered participants. We have sign language interpreters as well. This is a hybrid session, so to support engagement across both spaces, we have moderators in the room and online. My colleague Jessa will be responsible for the room, while Raquel will monitor the Q&A function on Zoom to ensure your inputs and questions are incorporated into the discussion. So please feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know your name and the organization you're representing for those who are joining us online. And please also keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking, and feel free to share reflections in the chat throughout the session. And with that, it is my pleasure to begin today's event by welcoming Francesca Perucci, Director of Policy and Partnerships at Open Data Watch, and my colleague Jessa Encarnacion, who's the Interregional Advisor on Gender Statistics at UN Women, who will kick us off with the launch of the working group on gender and citizen data. Over to you, Jessa and Francesca. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Papa. Is this on? Yes. No. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Papa. Hello, everybody. As Papa already introduced me, I'm Francesca Perucci from Open Data Watch. For those who don't know, Open Data Watch is a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. We work to support countries in building stronger, more open, more inclusive data systems. And I stress the word inclusive because a lot of our work really focuses on inclusive data, data intersectionality, and of course, citizen data. And that's just to explain the reason why we are very happy to be co-chairing, co-leading this working group on gender data. We were asked by my colleagues, our colleagues at UN Women, to start this adventure together. So we're very happy and pleased to be able to advance the work of the citizen data in this particular, with this particular lens of the gender dimension. Papa has already introduced a little bit of the why we agreed and we decided to launch this working group within the collaborative. As you've heard so far, there were introductions and of the collaborative works and the explanation a little bit of how the framework has been put together and the principles that guide the framework. And you've seen, the approach we've taken with the collaborative is really to take a cross-cutting perspective and develop the tools that are useful to produce citizen data and use citizen data from different angles. Although, of course, we know there are specific groups that are very engaged normally when it comes to citizen data, and specific civil society organizations that are more active with data production, but it's really cross-cutting. The working group was established to really ensure that there is also a gender perspective integrated and that we can really consistently across all these initiatives keep an eye on how we integrate the gender dimension. And as I mentioned earlier during the Q&A session of session 1, we look at gender in a little bit of, I would say, a broader sense. And so there is, of course, also a focus on different gender identities and sexual orientation. So that will come throughout the work of the group as we move forward. So Papa also mentioned why it is important to have the group now. And he mentioned, the financial challenges when it comes to data, especially when it comes to demographic and health data. That is, of course, those are data that are often at the basis of many of the data that you need to address gender issues. And of course, the DHS disruption is one major issue and event that comes to mind, but it's not just that. It's overall, financing for gender data in general has been scarce and it's under threat. And there are, challenges to the overall multilateral system and organizations that have traditionally been very active and very helpful in promoting gender and promoting gender data production and use are also have seen their funding decrease. So important to look at non-traditional data, new data sources, engage citizens and civil society organizations. It's absolutely critical to fill those gaps, but also, as we discussed in session 1, to give agency to citizens and to people. So the working group was really launched to address these issues, and it just, I would say, today is the official launch, right? Yeah. So, although it works behind the scenes a little bit already, trying to set up as Jessa will describe that and present what we're doing. But this today is the official launch of the group. And really, I want to stress that the group is not working as a group; is working within the collaborative. Is really fully integrated into the work of the collaborative, and will work in sync. And you'll see, we'll present various aspects of the work, including data quality. Even that will be in sync with everything that the collaborative is doing also on data quality. So with that, I'll pass it on to Jessa. Also, one small correction, Papa was given the wrong information. It's our fault. We don't have sign interpretation for this session, unfortunately, but for the next one we will do. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Francesca, for setting the stage and likewise highlighting why work on gender and citizen data, and likewise, particularly the establishment of the working group on gender and citizen data under the collaborative on citizen data is both timely and urgent. So I'm pleased to now share with you an overview of the working group on gender and citizen data, co-convened by UN Women and Open Data Watch, as well as some of the other core partners that we have already worked with conceptualizing this working group, which I will mention later. So this group was created to ensure that, as Francesca mentioned, that gender considerations in the overall work on citizen data remain visible, actionable, and likewise mainstream throughout the process. It is to embed gender perspectives throughout the citizen data value chain, from methodology to governance to validation and use. And therefore, within the working group, our objectives are clear, that we are, like Peter has alluded already, to enabling environments, that we are to develop practical tools and guidance grounded in the Copenhagen framework, aligned with the broader work of the collaborative, that it will support, I think it has been specifically underscored, that it's not just the framework, the Copenhagen framework, but rather implemented at the national as well as local communities, and therefore we would be supporting integration of gender perspective when it is actually implemented on the ground. Third, it's also the documentation of innovations, especially those led by women's rights organizations. I think we all know that this is not something new. For decades, civil society organizations, women rights organizations have been working on this. It's more of systematically and documenting it and highlighting it in the broader global gender data ecosystem, in the broader data ecosystem on citizen data, to highlight it. And likewise, support capacity building efforts across CSOs, across governments, and explicitly with feminist organizations. And likewise, to promote not just production, but likewise the use of gender-related, gender-responsive citizen data to drive inclusive and accountable policies. So as we launch this working group, we recognize that demand will continue to evolve, that we are prepared to respond to these evolving needs across a wide range of gender-related issues on citizen data. But based on early engagement with the collaborative as well as with other close partners, a few initial priorities have emerged, and therefore we have identified some initial areas of focus by the working group. First, on the gender-focused data quality assurance framework. Data quality has always been raised in the discussion on citizen data, particularly in the third experts group meeting we had last year, also under the on the margins of the HLPF, and therefore that's also a priority within the working group. Second, the intersection of gender data on indigenous peoples and the environment, ensuring their inclusion in climate data related issues and work. And lastly, sexual harassment, an area where we see citizen data already offers meaningful solutions beyond what traditional violence against women surveys can actually capture. So just to underscore that these are just starting points, that as the working group grows, we expect a diverse and evolving data agenda shaped by the needs and meaningful and innovations of our collective community. And then, so why a dedicated working group on gender within the collaborative on citizen data? So it's really to serve as the go-to platform within the collaborative for integrating gender across the citizen data value chain. Our work, as Francesca mentioned, it definitely aligns with and strengthens the collaborative's broader agenda. For example, there is a broader agenda on data quality. Therefore, embedding a gender lens is likewise part of our work. Second, there are already stock-taking efforts already mentioned by Hao Yi in the identification of priority countries, ensuring that gender data gaps are likewise identified in the stock-taking efforts. Likewise, there's also discussions on successful, sufficient and meaningful engagement of citizens throughout the data value chain. So making sure that feminist and women's rights organizations are likewise a center or at least a part of this citizens engagement efforts.
and likewise in global priorities identified within the collaborative, providing insights and tools grounded in the lived realities of women and girls. So we are proud to already have a diverse and growing membership, despite it being already just launched today. So from CSOs and NSOs to UN agencies and human rights organizations. So we're co-chaired by Open Data Watch, a very close partner of UN Women. We've confirmed members from the stakeholder group of persons with disabilities for sustainable development, with thanks to Elizabeth. The IHR, or the Denmark Institute for Human Rights, who's done extensive work with indigenous peoples. Paris 21 through Liliana. We also have UNSD with thanks to Howie. We have UNITAR. I think Elena has joined us remotely, and likewise UNCBD, or Conference on Biodiversity. And we are hoping that Jillian, they have confirmed, and Jillian Campbell is also part of it, and likewise more. There are ongoing coordination, awaiting confirmation from CSOs, from Philippines, from Uruguay, hopefully, and NSOs likewise from Nepal, Samoa, and Kenya. So we will definitely welcome new voices. So if you're working at the intersection of gender and citizen data or want to contribute, we invite you to join us. And with this launch, we take a complete step toward a more inclusive, responsive, and gender-aware data ecosystem together. So thank you, and I look forward to today's discussions. So I give the floor back to Francesca, who serves as moderator for this session.
Thank you so much, Jessa. And I think, Ramya, if you're online, we have a quick Mentimeter.
Yes, I'm sharing my screen for.
Thank you, Ramya. Before I introduce the speakers.
Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yes, we see the question for everybody in the room. When up is gone.
I'm launching the question.
Oh, okay, you launched it. Yes. Okay, I'll read the question. When you think of gender-related citizen data, what does quality mean in your context? That's a packed question. We take what, Ramya, 1 minute?
Yes, we have about 3 minutes. If I could just explain, participants, you are requested to scan the QR code or go to slido.com and enter the code here, which is 6201052. And the question will pop on your mobile screens, and then you could provide your responses so that we're able to see the responses online.
Okay, it's populating, Ramya, so I think context matter.
It's already very telling for our quality assurance work. I didn't have a lot of time there. That's my answer as well. That's my definition. Wow. Because official statistics is always lagging, especially on social.
Francesca, seems like you have enough responses.
I think we have a lot of responses, yes.
Yeah, a lot of responses. So this is the word cloud. The font size determines the number of times some of the audiences have responded similar keywords. So for instance, inclusive has been responded by multiple people, which ascertains that this is one of the key quality criteria that they believe that should be considered when we think about gender-related citizen data. Over to you, Francesca.
Thank you. Yeah, I see inclusive, representative, reliable. also very interesting.
Rebellion.
Yes, very nice. And this is perfect for me now to introduce the first speaker. Actually, just to say, this session will be sort of in two parts. We'll hear after the introduction from myself and Jessa of the working group, we'll hear on data quality, and then we'll stop for Q&As and then go to the panelists. So to introduce the work on gender data quality assurance, I'm very pleased to introduce Professor Monica Pratesi. She's a professor of statistics at the University of Pisa in Italy, but she's also one of the key members of the collaborative since the day one when we were in Bangkok together, when we actually launched this initiative and decided to establish the collaborative. So it's a great pleasure to introduce you, Monica. And Monica, as I said, will talk about the framework that we are proposing to use with a gender focus on data quality. Monica, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sharing the screen. Just a minute. Can you see?
Yeah, we can see well.
Okay.
Presentation mode. Now it's gone.
It's gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go back.
So here I am. So just to say a few words towards data quality.
No, we don't see the presentation anymore.
It was there earlier.
It was there, but then
When it was already on the slideshow, we lost it.
yeah.
Okay, so let me try again. Sorry.
Otherwise, we can share from here. Right? We have Gerald.
Gerald,
And now?
Now we see it. Go to presentation. Perfect. Now it's there.
Perfect. Okay. So good morning, everyone. I'm Monica Pratesi. I'm working now at the University of Pisa, but I have a past in the Italian National Statistical Institute. And I will be sharing insights on how we can move towards data quality in the context of gender-related citizen data, and focusing on credibility, usability, and alignment with global frameworks. This talk explores three core dimensions of data quality: trustworthiness, inclusivity, and utility. And this is done with a gender lens. I'll map these dimensions to the Copenhagen framework for citizen data and highlight concrete examples and protocols that enhance data credibility and impact. So we need, first of all, to establish a clear premise on the quality dimensions. And this is because, I'm sorry about that, okay. We need to focus on key dimensions of citizen data quality, and then we can address them. And why this? This because we need a flexible definition of quality. It is essential. And I would say that traditional frameworks like total survey error do not always fit non-traditional data sources like citizen data. Citizen data is collected via varied modes, online platforms, mobile apps, participatory mapping, and often involves partnerships between public and private sectors. So we need an accessible, inclusive language of data quality that works for NSOs, CSOs, and communities alike. So let me start with a definition, and then we will use our gender lenses. So what is trustworthiness? It refers to the extent to which data and indicators are perceived as reliable, impartial, accurate, and ethically produced. And we have just seen in the word cloud just projected that many of these words are important. are considered important elements of citizen data quality. But anyhow, why it matters? It matters because stakeholders are more likely to use and act on data they trust. Key elements include, obviously, in this definition, also the use of validated methodologies, transparent data processes, and ethical safeguards. Also, reputation is important. But coming to our gender lens, trustworthiness is about credibility, transparency, and ethical production. And this is obviously in very good connection with Copenhagen principles of integrity, transparency, and accountability. Just to produce examples, in Kenya and Tanzania, community women leaders collected gender-based violence data, which has been then validated by the national statistical offices. And these practices ensured reliability and built institutional trust grounded in gender-sensitive validation protocols. So, in my opinion, this is what gender-aware integrity looks like in action. So, there are examples of trustworthiness seen by gender lenses and with gender lenses. Another dimension that is important is inclusivity. And this has been mentioned many times during this morning. And what it is, it represents the way we use to include diverse realities of all population groups, particularly those who are often marginalized and underrepresented. This is important. This is not only a matter of filling data gaps. It matters because it is obvious that inclusive data ensures that policies and decisions do not leave anyone behind. But this requires the possibility to disaggregate data by sex, age, income, geography, disability, and it requires for participation of vulnerable or minority groups in data processes. So lived experience are fundamental, and this is because this is why I want to underline that inclusivity means recognizing and capturing the diverse lived experience of all population groups. And in countries like Colombia and Uganda, feminist CSOs helped redesign time use surveys, introducing new questions and methodologies that reflect the realities of unpaid care work. So their contributions ensure that citizen data is not only collected about women, but with them, and this is important. Then the third principle, utility. We always understand, and we want to stress that relevance, timeliness, and usability of data are important for decision making, but even high-quality data has limited value if it is not used or usable in real-world decision-making context. So we need that our data be useful. And this means that there is a connection with real policy needs. And an example you will see later better than now, but the Women in Mining Index in Senegal, developed with the Statistical Authority in Senegal and CSOs, turned citizen insights into concrete action, tracking gender inequalities in the extractive sector. So not only gender-based violence, but other examples, and they show that citizen data, when structured and validated, becomes actionable intelligence and not just advocacy. You will see several examples after my talk of this. So trying to map everything I have said to the Copenhagen framework, we see that these case studies align with the Copenhagen principles. So trustworthiness is realized through memorandum of understanding and validation protocols, inclusivity through community-centered design, and utility through integration into national records and SDG monitoring. In few words, gender considerations are not peripheral or something that are not central. They are foundational to credibility and usefulness. So there are many references to what I have just said, but and also the expert group meetings materials on citizen data outcomes. But let me briefly walk through other examples. Kenya, GBV data gathered by women validated by the National Bureau of Statistics. Tanzania, mobile health audits for maternal care. Colombia, feminist insights into time use statistics. Philippines, structured CSO submissions on SDGs. Ethiopia, you will see now, data collection on harassment in schools. And Senegal, Women in Mining Index tracking gender gaps in extractives. So those collaborations show how citizen data, when aligned with NSO standards, are credible, ethical, and inclusive. So we need to cooperate, and NSO should look at CSO's practices, but also vice versa. It should be a shared experience. So in closing, moving towards data quality in citizen data, especially through gender lens, I must say that it is not just about improving measurement. It is about ensuring women's reality-informed decisions and aligning data with both statistical rigor and social justice, I would say. So this is my last word, and I thank you for attention. Thank you very much.
Sorry, thank you so much, Monica. And I'd like to take a moment to take a few questions from the audience before we move to the panel and the case studies. So questions for Monica, but also if anything related to the working group in general that we introduced earlier with Jessa. On the chat? Okay. Let's see if there is anybody here. Otherwise, I go to the chat.
That's a question.
Yeah, Pam.
I have to
Here, come here.
Can I check?
No, you please.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very interested in the Kenya research that you mentioned about gender-based violence. I'm working on research as well, looking at gender-based violence. So my question is, how do you include persons with disabilities and ensure that this is disaggregated in this research and ensure that disability is disaggregated accurately? And how do you work with women with disabilities in this research or data collection and ensure that women with disabilities are leading the data collection? So I think this is a very important point, because what you're talking about generally with citizen data is excellent. But I really think when we look at inclusivity, we have to ensure that we're not working in silos and separately, but we have to work together from the very beginning. And so I'm very interested in how you're doing that from the perspective of women with disabilities in the case of Kenya or other cases. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam and Elizabeth for the question. I don't see, yeah, I have Kate and Joe, and then I'll move to the chat. I'll take these two. Kate, over to you.
Oh, thank you. I'm Kate Caldwell. I'm from the Center on Racial and Disability Justice. And to sort of build off that question as well, one thing that keeps coming up is it being women-led. And so then it raises for me immediately the question of how it's going to be inclusive of LGBT individuals, particularly within communities like the disability community, where we actually see a higher number of non-binary and trans individuals who are disabled. And so if we're going to be truly inclusive and intersectional, it immediately raises that question for me as well.
Thank you, Kate. Joe?
Thanks very much. I'm Jo Crawford from the Equality Insights Program. My question is coming in from, I guess, from a bit more of an economic perspective, and it's related to the question of the criteria about quality and the concern that I have more generally in the space of inclusive data, that there's a failure to fully account for the costs of what you don't have. And so there's a lot of focus on rigor and quality in new things being collected, less concern always with the costs and lack of quality driven by failure to be representative of some of the data sources that are presently existing and being collected. By way of a concrete example, while the disruption of the demographic and health survey is significant and problematic from a range of perspectives, women over 50 are not visible in that data set. So that's a, but by design, systemic gap. And so I guess my question is, as we're thinking about the quality criteria to assess the relevance of citizen data, what is the attention to that kind of general question about the concern with quality in the things that are being developed to address gaps, but not necessarily always with the gaps in the things that exist currently? I don't know if that's clear enough. I guess my question is really about the extent to which the quality criteria is taking account of whether the data that is being developed or assessed, the new data sources, citizen data sources, are addressing gaps in things that already exist, but the costs of which are not sufficiently valued in the way in which we're assessing the contributions of different kinds of data sources. I think I'm seeing, Francesca, that you're looking blank, like I'm being too complicated. It's the different valuations of what we have versus what we're developing, and criteria that sometimes applied to the new versus the existing. And is there a way, maybe I should pose it a question, is there a way in which that value of addressing a problem can be valued in to the criteria set that's being developed? Thanks.
What you're saying is actually adding the price tag to the quality, in a sense, to the quality criteria, to the dimensions. The trade-off.
Opportunity cost. Trade-off and opportunity cost.
Yes, exactly.
And whether the opportunity cost, which of what is missing, and that's the thing, it's very hard to value what's missing, but I do think it's an important part of understanding the relative value and worth of some of the citizen data contributions in the landscape and constellation of existing data.
I think it goes, I'll ask Monica to address that. It goes under the utility bit of the three pieces in your framework. But let me stop here before I move to the chat, because I think we have collected a lot, Monica, for you to respond, but also to say that we're also moving into the discussion on intersectionality, both from Pam and Kate, which is after lunch, we'll be able to go and dive deeper into that. But Monica, over to you.
Yeah, okay. First of all, I must say that inclusivity is a very important principle, but I must say also that We are in charge of opening the window on reality. And this must be done together with civil society organizations. Otherwise, it is not possible. I mean, there is an issue that is that always, speaking from the perspective of national statistical offices, I must say that they need to know the world as it is, first of all. Otherwise, they in principle are not able to design and collect useful data. So the reason why there is the need of a cooperation with the civil society organizations, this is my opinion now, but I think that we can build on this opinion, is that they are the eyes, the wide eyes that NSOs can have, must have, in order to include all the aspects and groups of the operating real life situations, like just to make an example, the problem of disability, the inclusion of the disabled persons in the data collection. I think that we can work towards sharing protocols and building on dialogue and sharing experiences. Otherwise, we are not going very far in quality, because quality it is important, but it is in the eye of the beholder. And so we need to move towards a transparency and would say rigor in the definition of the criteria used to collect data. Otherwise, even data on specific groups are not useful if they are not explainable in some way. So we need to work towards making this clear, first of all. So the error profile of data, because data are always affected by errors, in few words. We need to know which error can be found in the data and how to work to cope with this error. And this must be in the most transparent way we know. Otherwise, we are not exploring reality, but we are running the risk to hide reality, and this is not what we want to have in our quality profile.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Monica. I think Jessa also wants to add.
Yes, just to quickly add to the point made by Katie and our colleague on the point on the disability. So on gender-based violence within UN Women, through our Ending Violence Against Women section, there have been efforts to likewise compile information on gender-based violence experienced by people with diverse sexual orientation and gender identities. And I think also likewise for persons with disabilities, violence against women experienced by women and girls during COVID with disabilities. So I think that's also something. But I think while these efforts are being undertaken, I think it points to the bigger issue. It points to the bigger concern that how systematic are we able to document all of these innovations and provide all this practical guidance and tools. And I think that's the rationale why sexual harassment, for example, in sexual harassment, probably particularly from LGBTIQ plus or persons with disabilities, is something that we will address with more intentionality moving forward.
Thank you so much, Jessa. And I'd like now to turn to questions from the chat and pass it over to Raquel, who's been monitoring that.
Thank you. We have very good questions in the chat, actually, but I'll just focus on a couple of them now, and then we'll come back. The first one, maybe Monica can help us answer. It's related to gender data, citizen data, and health. So again, this component of intersectionality, and it's related to how data quality can then support with redistribution of power. So the question is, in many low resource settings, gender data initiatives struggle with power asymmetries between funders, governments, and local communities. So how can citizen-led data efforts actually redistribute this power in health decision-making? But we can also think more broadly to ensure the voices of people, especially marginalized women, such as rural indigenous women, actually help shape these health data systems, and they also help policy responses. So that's one. And another one that I have for maybe both you, Jessa and Francesca, is there's a lot of interest in joining the citizen data working groups. So how can other organizations, especially working with LGBTQ plus communities, people with disabilities and health data, how can they join the working group?
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, they can join the working group just by letting us know, and I think we can put and share on the chat our email addresses, so or the citizendata.org generic address. Either way, it would work, and we're happy to expand. In fact, we're looking for new members to expand and have good representation. So thank you so much for that. But let me then turn over to Monica to address the real difficult questions.
Yeah, they are very
Monica,
big questions, very challenging. So intersectionality, if we want to build, we must have a goal that is a data ecosystem, gender data ecosystem. So if this is the goal, it is obvious that we need intersectionality. We can't consider only gender as a classification in tables, in statistical, in tables of statistical data. This is not what we are going to do. We need to work towards intersectionality. And this means that we have to balance the power that each single group can have in producing data on its own target. This is not easy, never, especially today, because today we are producing data even if we are not aware of producing data on ourselves, on our behaviors, and so on. Social media are giving us a visibility that to us and to our behavior, a visibility that was not possible before in the past years. So this opened the discussion on the data ownership. So data, even if the digital ones, are owned by citizens, and they can donate them or not, or work with them through civil society organizations. And so civil society organizations are in between, I would say, the citizen in the broader sense of the word and the data production. Citizens can donate their data to everyone if they want, but they need to be aware that the data are their data, and they can donate them or keeping them for themselves. This is it seems not completely related to the issues we are facing now, but instead they are completely related. So I would say that the problem of intersectionality and the redistribution of power in the data value chain should be addressed considering the data property and the data donation mechanism. This is something that we can explore building on what we call data literacy or statistical literacy. And this is why e-learning is very important. This is why courses and MOOC are very important to talk about data ownership, data property, and how we can share this ownership through donation. This means that we must be aware, and we should work towards the building of awareness through, I would say, education and training. So I don't know, maybe I have addressed the issue and not given a specific reply, but I think that we should reflect on all these issues, mentioned issues. Thank you for the question, anyhow.
Thank you, Monica. And I think there was also a question earlier in the previous session on the issue of extraction and to what extent are also citizens able, even if they co-create the initiative, to what extent are they able to have full ownership and control of how data are used, and that's it's part of the Copenhagen framework, and we have the 13 principles that are there just for that, to ensure. But of course, it's also how you implement it and how you have the quality assurance, to make sure that you follow all those principles. So a lot more to discuss, but unfortunately, I don't want to take time from the second part of this session that will go over some of the case studies, and we'll also hear from Liliana on the participation for transformation model. So I'll thank Monica again. Hope you can stay for the rest of the session because there might be more Q&As later on. So first I'd like to introduce Liliana, you're online. I know it's getting very late for you.
Yes, I'm still there, thanks.
Thank you, Liliana Sukhodolska from Paris 21. You already heard from her. She will present participation for transformation model from Paris 21. And then we'll hear about 3 case studies, Ethiopia, Senegal, and Mexico. But first, Liliana, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Francesca, and hello, everyone. Liliana Suchodolska, team lead of the Inclusive Gender Data Ecosystem team at Paris 21. Those who don't know Paris 21, it's a partnership for statistics, for the development of statistics in the 21st century. We are hosted at the OECD in Paris, but we work with low and middle income countries, national statistical systems. So we engage primarily national statistical offices in capacity building activities, and we advocate for more funding for data and statistics. And we see the engagement of civil society, especially in case of supporting gender data as a key initiative. So those of you who have seen me in the previous session, you may think we are just sitting here and developing frameworks or e-learning courses. Well, just to inform you, most of our time is actually spent working with countries, and same goes to UN Women with whom we have developed this framework, because it has been based really on substantive materials and country work that we have put in place so far during our 2-year collaboration. And it really I hope it's going to inspire some of discussions that we have all here heard in the room so far. But let's go to the substance. So participation for transformation of gender data. This framework is building a frame for understanding of why it matters to bring civil society to the ecosystem of gender data that Monica has introduced in her presentation, and that we all, I think, of us here in the room are really the believers in the power of civil society in actually advancing the agenda of gender equality. But we also recognize the need of actually bridging many communities, and therefore we really want to transform how gender data is produced, is used, and is reused. And that's very much in line with the Copenhagen framework with participation in civil society data. So a bit of a rationale of why we are doing that. So the concept of participation, bringing citizens and communities into policymaking is not new. Some of the academics will agree that there is actually a lot of research and practice already in the 80s of last century. So this has been really a holy grail. And probably we have to start over and over again, because we know how difficult it is, how much change management it requires, and transformative actions, and advocacy, and various actions at all levels of intervention that we can imagine. But for now, we can come up with the particular problems when it comes to gender data. We of course, we have heard ad nauseum about gender data gaps. And we know that this is, in fact, very much owing to the presence and advocacy and tireless efforts of civil society actors who come and nudge and demand accountability when it comes to problems that affect women and people of various gender identities, LGBTQI. And we know that it's thanks to them that these voices are being heard and that these problems are being put on the radar of then substantive frameworks such as SDGs and other monitoring frameworks. Second issue I want to flag here is that gender data as such has no house in government settings. So when we think of data, it's usually for NSOs. However, NSOs, initially they have no particular, rarely they have particular, division that would be housing all of the gender problems that you can find in data. You have demographic statistics, but we know gender is not only about demographic or social statistics. It's also about education. It's also about economy. It's about environment and so on. So bringing that gender awareness to the House of Statistics office is one challenge. The second one is that you may think, okay, there is probably a ministry in charge of women's affairs in most of the countries. Yes, but then data per se is not necessarily seen as a huge asset of transformation still in many countries. So bridging these two communities already is a bit of a challenge. We know, of course, the story of administrative data exchange between the two institutions and the data literacy of ministries, the lack of actually data or staff in charge of data in ministries and so on, and the very prioritization of gender issues in governments. So we believe that really the civil society participation can bring additional momentum into bridging those two silos. Gender data production and use need to be bridged. I think many of you have seen the gender data value chain that was developed by Open Data Watch and Data2X, which really nicely presents that gender data has to be addressed at all various stages. From actually conception to the actual use of that data, and the use, and especially has been something that Paris 21, but also UN Women has been studying very much recently, recognizing that data produced doesn't mean that that data has been used by a policymaker to design policies or prepare budgets. So understanding how data are used and in which conditions, but also what makes data usable, who are the actors that amplify data, that's also part of this conceptualization here. The final, each country must undertake their journey towards gender equality at their pace, and that requires collaboration of national stakeholders. So we are regularly consulting civil society organizations through our country work, through our knowledge development work, and we get to appreciate that still in many countries, gender is considered a top-down parachuted idea, whereas it's not coming necessarily from the ground, if you want, and that's sometimes a message we hear from statistics offices. And we also know that today all discussions around statistics are about AI. And so very often when a policymaker wants to address their problem, they may not necessarily think of consulting their own constituencies on the ground, but instead they would type a question in ChatGPT, right? So how can we make sense of that particular road that countries can undertake, at the same time knowing that we can hear the brief on our back of the AI, of the need to digitalize, of the need of actually getting information faster, better, and so on. Where is the actual voice of those left behind on this radar? So for the need of transformation, we know about the gender data value chain, but I also wanted to bring to your attention the gender data capacity concept, which has been introduced last year also through our work with UN Women, where the gender data outlook specifies the need of looking at gender data enabling environment, production, but also dissemination and accessibility because that is not a given, and that facilitates that uptake of gender data and the actual use, so the patterns, the enablers of gender data use that we are studying currently. Secondly, public institutions' interaction with civil society. So that's a very long story of trust, of openness, of bureaucratic approaches to actually engaging in any dialogue with citizens, and that's differs really from country to country. But we hope that, with this framework, we can also identify some potential entries on when that can potentially happen. Thirdly is the civil society organizations' data practices. So, and that has been addressed by Monica, but also others. There is a huge capacity building need for civil society, apart from, of course, even greater need for resources to help them introduce or implement scientifically robust, data practices, even very basic. We've seen statistics offices even providing guidance on building a very basic Excel spreadsheet on very basic data of participation for a civil society. So one can start small, one can start big. We know civil society are very heterogeneous organizations. They can be transnational, they can be very local, grassroots organisms. So we also need to take stock of that when we provide guidance for countries. Our own understanding of evidence, we are increasingly in the statistical community talking about qualitative data, of data storytelling, and also making sense and evaluating quality of that data. So ONS UK, I think, is also one of the trailblazing statistics offices where qualitative data is being considered as a valid evidence finally, and that I think also opens doors for civil society presence in the statistical value chain where because of the nature of data that they produced primarily. So now,
sorry,
yes.
Sorry, Liliana, to interrupt you. Apologies, but we're really a little bit behind time. If you can
Wrapping up.
Wrap it up quickly. Thank you so much.
So 3 categories of participation: engagement, involvement, and empowerment, recognizing that particular journey that countries can choose to advance gender data. That is also presented in the framework, and you can dive deep of why this matters to start small or start deep, depending on what is the capacity of those who undertake the initiative. We have flagged participatory moments in the data value chain, some of the good practices of mapping stakeholders, of spotting data use patterns, of policy dialogue, and so on. So that they are also at your disposal when you consult the framework. And there is also maybe, I hope you'll find it useful, a matrix of actually data value chain stages and categories of action, of engagement, involvement, and empowerment, where you can consult some of the examples existing online and see how various countries have been implementing this type of participation. So thank you so much for your attention. Please consult the framework. Please ask questions. We are so excited to be here to present that work, and we really hope for a very meaningful discussion. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Liliana. That was great, and sorry to rush you, but we still have to go through the case studies. We're really running behind, and I'm afraid I'll have to take a little bit of your time from the lunch break to complete the session. I'm happy now to introduce Ramia, who will has been with us, and I must acknowledge the fact that it's really, really late for Ramia, late into the night. And Ramia Imandi from UN Women, she will present 2 case studies, one from Senegal and one from Ethiopia. Ramia, you have the floor. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Francesca, and also thank you to the organizers for providing me with the opportunity to present. These case studies are specially compiled by Florencia meticulously. I'm presenting the first 2, she'll come in later. So, okay, I'll be skipping this slide. This is what we have been discussing from session 1 to session 2 up till now. So the importance of citizen data and how it can cater to gender data gaps. straight away getting into the first case study, which is the Ethiopia study, which was both flagged by Monica as well as one of the cases from Liliana's presentation. One of the key challenges that Ethiopia was facing was they were trying to institutionalize gender data capacity. Very recently, their national priority has been gender equality and women empowerment. And considering that, and then they have realized that some of the capacities are not really strong in terms of collecting and using gender data, which is why this project has come up. UN Women Ethiopia, along with the CSO International Institute of Rural Reconstruction, they launched a capacity building project in 2021. You'll see that some of the outcomes were so interesting and had a ripple effect that they had launched it once again in 2024. So the capacity building basically started with a baseline assessment where they realized among the 75 CSOs that they questioned or assessed, that 98% of them did not know what citizen data was, although they were collecting a lot of information. So it was important for building those capacities in terms of streamlining the definition, understanding the same framework and the wavelength in terms of collecting and using this particular data. So starting off from there, they developed together, both UN Women and the CSO together had developed the guidelines on citizen data, and then they used relevant training materials to capacitate the CSOs. The first set of trainings were conducted to 15 CSOs. And what's interesting in this is instead of just having one directional, they kind of cascaded the effect by letting the CSOs who've been trained to further train the other CSOs, which had a lot of ripple effect. This ripple effect did not end at just capacity building alone. What went ahead was they piloted two communities of practice, and very relevant, especially considering the sensitivity around the communities of practice in Addis Ababa and Bahirdar, where the CSOs had collected information on sexual harassment in schools and the gender-based violence among commercial sex workers. And the key findings revealed really high rates, shockingly, on gender-based violence among the sexual sex workers. Also, the strong participation from the schoolgirls in terms of sharing information on sexual harassment. So these were quite revealing, but also it ensured that the right collaboration allowed to identify right information. This is almost like a win-win situation where the sensitivity of the data was tackled by the CSOs and the monitoring was done by the NSO, Ethiopian Statistical Systems, where they ensure they capacitated the CSOs in rightfully collect the data. So it was a great collaboration effort that came front. Eventually, three major outcomes can be talked about. One is you saw the communities of practice. Second, the capacity building among the CSOs increased. And third, the gender accountability framework was developed and institutionalized, which kind of led to their gender equality and women empowerment efforts. Okay, now the second case study, which is from Senegal. This is again a very interesting case study. You know very well the kind of this disproportional effects on women coming from working in the mining industry, especially in terms of health, economic, and environmental impacts. They have to face the negative impacts, but at the same time, women's concerns, perspectives, and interests are quite often neglected. Although there are a lot of policies like the EITI, which is the Transparency Initiative in Extractive Industry, allows certain level of benefits to women, but women did not really know because they did not know where they fare, at what level do they fare at. So for this reason, UN Women in Senegal partnered with Women in Mining Senegal, which is again a network of CSOs, to develop and pilot a gender index in the extractive sector. So this index, what it essentially did was it assessed women's working conditions in the mining sector and to measure and track gender inequalities in terms of working conditions, wages, and participation in decision making. It floated around 5 dimensions. I mean, I can share the details later, but keeping it short, considering the time. Um, One of the key highlights of this was that how structured or clerical the data collection process was. This was mainly possible because of the collaboration with the NSO, ANSD from Senegal, because they ensured that the data also had a sampling strategy. They had two-stage random sampling. They targeted the geographic areas which were focused on mining areas, and the methods involved both quantitative method, which is survey collection, but also qualitative data method such as K-informant, KIIs, FCDs, FGDs. But what's more important is because the state actors and the non-state actors have come together in such a way, they formed a technical working group. And this working group ensured the data quality in the entire data collection process. You can see the list here, but just to highlight a few in-depth training, the qualitative methods used proper tools like CS Pro for collecting data. There were regular cross-checking of data. There was also validation of data at the community level. There was field level control. So all this has led to having proper information collected ethically and ensuring the sensitivity that is required while collection of the data. So at the end, the main outcomes were um, very how could I say, the outcomes had large impact. It gathered national level action. It influenced parliamentary debates. It had local budgeting from at the municipal governments, which led to this budget specifically for women empowerment. The compliance with EITI standards were adhered to. The collaboration led to a point where the CSO who led this entire initiative became a permanent member of the multipartite gender committee at the National Statistical System. And ultimately, the capacity building was also taken care of in the process of data collection. All the necessary local bodies and the CSOs were capacitated to further collect data. So these are two such cases, but I'm sure there are many out there that we would want to hear. So we welcome you to share your personal experiences or the experiences that you might have seen in your countries, and we would love to take it forward, especially in the working group of gender and citizen data. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramya. And thank you. And now I'd like to give the floor to Florencia Serrale. Florencia Serrale is actually the expert who is behind all the case studies conducted by the collaborative, and she's worked very extensively on several of them. So it's my great pleasure to give you the floor. Florencia, also getting very late for you. Over to you.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if Rami, are you still sharing the screen or because I can only see my face? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, let me share the screen.
Okay, thank you.
You.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Florencia Serrale. I'm going to walk you through one case study in Mexico. This is the National Survey on Gender Diversity. It was implemented by INEGIS, which is the NSO in Mexico. This is a probabilistic survey launched in 2021. It focused on individuals age 15 and older who self-identify as LGBTI+. And this was the first time in Mexico to have such a data collection effort of official statistics on sexual and gender diversity at a national scale. So the main goal of NDSEG, this is the acronym of the survey, was to provide evidence to design inclusive public policy, but also to address gaps to uphold LGBTI rights. And since its inception, INEGI worked in close collaboration with CONAPRED, which is a national council to prevent discrimination. And this partnership helped reach out and work closely with civil society organizations, with academics, with LGBTI communities to design the survey, and also to ensure an inclusive process, to support outreach efforts, and to build trust with respondents. The survey used several innovative practices to ensure accessibility. For example, sensitive questions were answered through an audio-assisted systems. INEGI also decided that all interviewers should be women to help build a sense of safety and also comfort for respondents to share their live experience of discrimination, for example. And the survey covered three main dimensions. First, housing and living conditions. Secondly, some socio-demographic factors, including gender identity, income, ethnicity, and disability. And third, it covered aspects such as emotional and mental health, personal satisfaction, and experiences of this discrimination. And this third part, as I mentioned, was audio assisted. INEGI used their track record experience in producing statistics, but also a mixed method approach to expand the coverage. So for instance, in 2022, they launched NDSEG Web, which is an online non-probabilistic version. So both surveys are not, let's say, they should be analyzed separately due to sampling to expand participation. And among the key findings of NDSEG, for example, 5% of people age 15 identified as LGBTI+. Nearly a third of respondents informed workplace discrimination. Over 1 in 4 reported having experienced suicidal thoughts. So this survey also alarmed on the situation of the LGBTI+ population in Mexico. Regarding the online survey, it had 14,000 respondents. For INEGI, it was the greatest effort and online participation, and it had more data because the participation was increased for younger and urban LGBTI individuals. And these findings were used by CSOs and government entities, for example, to inform reforms and laws both at the federal and state levels in Mexico. And this case study is interesting because it demonstrated how an NSO can lead a citizen data initiative and also exchange their engagement beyond public consultations. Throughout this case study, we see an NSO demonstrating its capacity of both a producer and a steward of citizen data. And moving forward, INEGI is now planning a second survey edition, and they are also planning to add new questions on political participation and experiences of violence. And let me quickly walk you through what we have found on the rest of the case studies, because they are also relevant for this panel. The two cases presented by Ramya and the Mexican case are part of a research that we are conducting at the collaborative. So over the past months, we documented 8 case studies from Africa, Asia, Europe, and Latin America. You can all see them in the map. For the sake of time, I'm not able to specifically talk you about the rest of the 5 case studies, but this research focused on data initiatives that center the voices of marginalized populations excluded or invisible in official statistics, and this include LGBTIQ persons, people with disabilities, indigenous communities, women minors, and waste speakers. And I will, next slide, please. I will quickly mention some of the learnings of this analysis. First of all, in terms of enablers of citizen data projects, and we have discussed, all the panelists have talked about this, the importance of collaboration across different sectors, but also within the data ecosystem to produce reliable citizen data. A second enabler is engaging communities in early stages and reaching out to grassroots actors, which play a key role, and they are a bridge between citizen data producers and communities. Also, citizen data projects that have been successful, they leverage tools to build inclusive processes, like the audio interviews I was mentioning, service in local languages, accessible formats, compensating people for their time to be there and to respond, but also to participate in data use and production, and also ensuring accessibility of spaces, of platforms, to make sure everyone can use the data. And for example, just to mention two cases, the indigenous navigator in Nepal and the profiling of people with disabilities in the Philippines are great examples on how an inclusive process can also help ensure that everyone is engaged and no one is left behind. Then the collaboration with the NSOs. For instance, the case studies that reach out to NSOs, for example, in the case of Senegal, improve data quality and it also ensure that the experiences of vulnerable groups were reflected in official statistics. Finally, the political will and institutional support are essential to make these initiatives sustainable. They also help turn citizen data into actionable insights. They also support laws. They create better services. For example, we have seen in Bangladesh with implementation of community scorecards with marginalized populations, how local governments actually improve services, and they also enhance social inclusion. In terms of challenges, there are some barriers, of course, to the development and sustainability of citizen data project. First of all, trust is still a major concern when it comes to citizen data. We need to overcome skepticism and increase reliability, and this is why it's important to host open and honest dialogues and spaces between NSOs and CSOs to build confidence in the data production processes. Financial sustainability also remains a challenge. In many of the case studies that we have looked at, these projects face short timelines, limited funding, and some of them insufficient digital infrastructure that can limit the scaling up of these initiatives. Data assurance is also key, so NSOs should also lead the development of tools and methods that can ensure quality, proper sampling, and sound data collection practices. Using methods can strengthen citizen data production, and this was the case of many initiatives that we looked at. But for example, in the case of waste pickers in Colombia, they combine quantitative data with community-based approaches, for example, to reach out to women that were not interviewed in the survey that was implemented, but then they could also reflect their life experiences and expand the citizen data produced. Finally, meaningful engagement is strongest at the start, so in data collection and survey design, but tends to weaken during data use and feedback. So we need to find ways to maintain and deepen meaningful participation throughout the entire process. And next slide, please. Finally, some quick reflections.
Sorry,
Yes.
Florencia, if you can really speed it up a little bit,
Yes.
because we're like 15 minutes behind. Thank you.
Yes, so recommendations: formalizing partnerships, the importance of building local capacities and data skills, as well as data governance models. This was something mentioned by Monica. The need to design inclusive and accessible tools and methods. Then addressing data quality concerns, securing sustainable funding, and finally sharing real impact stories that can showcase why citizen data matters, and to encourage others and encourage more support from NSOs and public actors. Thank you so much. This is all I had for you today.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry to have to rush you, but we're so behind schedule. But all those PowerPoints, of course, are available for people to. There's a lot also of text that you can read, and of course we have also questions on the chat that I'm hoping Raquel was able to address. And please stay in touch with us. We can continue the discussion, and we can also, for those in the room, continue the discussion during lunch. But before we break for lunch, I'd like to give the floor to Aoi for some concluding remarks.
Thank you, Chair. Very quickly, well, just a few minutes. At the opening of PAPA, of course, we heard how important citizen data is for leaving no one behind, especially for women and girls and the marginalized population groups and intersection of those suffering from intersectional vulnerability. How important it is to have inclusive rights-based, gender inclusive policies and data, especially under the current shrinking landscape of financing for data and statistics. So that's the first point. Second point, I would like to congratulate the launch of the group, working group on gender and citizen data. And then that your commitment to respond to current and evolving priorities. Noted down the 3 priority areas: work, gender-focused data quality assurance framework, climate change, and sexual harassment. And this work will, we're happy to see this, it will strengthen and also align with the collaborative work. And you already have a wider group of contribution, and you invite broad interest to join the group. So there has already been interest in the chat and from the participation of this session. So then we went to Monica and talk about data quality work with the gender lens and focus. It's extremely important, this work is extremely important to really also not only for the gender group, and we really hope to benefit from this work for our work, and because at the collaborative we are working on a guideline or guidance on data quality for citizen data. So, and we will really benefit from the Monica's experience, expertise, and also from the gender and citizen data working group. We've seen case studies, and there are CSO driven, NSO driven, but 3 things: partnership is important, participation of citizens are important, and then they all have impact, which is extremely important. Very happy to hear the case studies, and then huge thanks to the Hewlett Foundation that supported such case studies, that has 8 case studies and also a synthesis report that are going to come up very soon, that you already hear a little bit from Florencia. Thank you, Florencia, for working on the case studies. We will have all these reports launched very soon. So all the summary